What happens if you don't level up ADP in Dark Souls 2 Scholar of the First Sin? Hey, welcome back everybody, StreamYourMind here, and today we are going to find out if not leveling ADP actually makes the game worse. For those of you who don't know, ADP is the main stat responsible for raising your agility, which is tied to the number of iframes you have during your rolling animations. The I in iframe stands for invincibility because during rolling animations in this game, you have a certain window of frames where your character can't be hit, hence invincible. Opposed to the other entries in the series though, Dark Souls 2 is the only game that ties iframes to a stat, and while being invincible for a longer time when dodging is a pretty damn important function, agility is also tied to the consumption of items such as drinking estus or other healing items like gems. So the more agility, the faster you can drink and pop off those crystals, baby. Wait, that came out wrong. So today we're going to find out what happens if you have the lowest amount of ADP in the game and if it actually has a big of an impact as the community generally claims. Does this stat deserve all the hate the community has thrown at it over the years? Well, let's find out. And FYI, I know leveling attunement can raise agility as well, so I'm not going to level that up either. But before we begin, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the channel. I'm trying to reach 20,000 subs by the end of 2025, and it would be amazing if you could help me reach that goal. We begin our journey in the lands Betwixt, because Dark Souls 2 is the only game in the series that doesn't start off with a character creator. After reaching Gary Hilton's house in the woods, I was asked to recall my name. Yeah, that sounds about right. I picked the Bandits class as it's the class with the lowest starting ADP, starting at 3, and with the use of items we could take that even lower. Once I chose the Bonfire Ascetic as a starting gift, I was ready for action. Through the use of Cheat Engine, I was able to spawn directly into my inventory the Work Hook, which is a weapon. And a really bad one at that. But this baby is capable of lowering the ADP of its user by 3 points. So by keeping it in my offhand, I was able to get my ADP to a symbolic 1. And even though your agility remains 85 whether you have 1 or 3 ADP regardless, needing to keep a weapon in my left hand at all times would mean I could not hide behind a shield, and therefore I would have to actually interact with the rolling mechanics of the game. FYI, 85 agility means 6 iframes during fast rolls, which is 5 less frames than you get in Dark Souls 1. And as a form of additional challenge, I will not be leveling up Vigor and I will not be using the Ring of Bindings, which decreases the effects of hollowing. And hollowing in this game lowers your total health. So yeah, fun stuff. This means that in order to make it through this run, we will need to upgrade our weapon fast, because you don't need to roll if the enemies are already dead. Once I made it to Majula, I picked up the Morning Star as my first tool of destruction, as well as the binoculars to look at the beautiful scenery. I picked up every useful item in the area, especially the Titanite shard, and after joining the Way of Blue Covenant and getting my hands on the Blue Seal for a 1% increase to my health, I had to get the Crestfallen Knight to die so I could obtain the Ring of Steel protection and get a buff to my physical defenses. But turns out, the NPC is quite a difficult opponent so early in the game. So instead of wasting any time, I made my way to the Forest of Fallen Giants, miraculously made it through the fog wall, reached the bonfire, and then tried to get this skip. But for some reason, I was unable to get the barrels to explode. Perhaps my positioning was wrong? Anyways, after unlocking the shortcut the boring way, I picked up the Titanite shard and I took the elevator down to our first boss, the Last Giant. Well, there isn't much to say about this guy. He stomped and whiffed, and since it's an early fight, our ADP wouldn't be high level anyways, even under normal circumstances. So, it was just the Last Giant. After speaking to the merchant in the forest, I invited her back to my place, where I demonstrated her why a key that opens many doors is a good key, and even though the key she was selling me could only open one, it was all that I needed, as it would allow me to unlock the blacksmith found here in Majula. I picked up the short bow found in the chest inside the shop and leveled up. I had a general idea of leveling up both dex and strength so I could be able to wield as many weapons as I wanted, and also because even though I ended up using mostly dex weapons, at least the strength could increase my vigor, even if by a very ineffective margin. You all know why we are here, but if there is a chance you've been living under a rock somewhere on Mars, you can get the Dragon Rider to fall off the edge and take a swim by counted 6 steps and dodging on his left. Once I finished leveling up again, I upgraded my Morning Star to +2 and I got ready to face our next boss. and Pursuer is definitely tougher than the last giant, but by baiting his charge attack by staying at mid to long range, roll on his shield side and punish, there was nothing to worry about, for the most part. There were some questionable hits taken on my behalf, but apart from that, I didn't feel like I was being punished heavily when rolling, and after almost choking at the end of the fight, I was able to defeat the Pursuer. Once I dropped off in the Lost Bastille by the symbol of American freedom and democracy, I picked up the human effigies inside the chest as well as the dull ember, and I returned to Majula because I was hungry for revenge. Give me my ring, you son of a bitch! I returned to the Lost Bastille where there were a few very important things to pick up, such as the fragrant branch of yore and coveted silver serpent ring found inside this chest. Unfortunately though, the Pursuer doesn't like it when someone steals from his lunchbox. After showing off what not to do when fighting the Pursuer in that particular arena, I picked up the antiquated key before chatting with the best girl. And since I came here flying on an eagle, it felt only natural to drop some bombs in the name of democracy. This helped me unlock another blacksmith, but in order to actually get him to go to work, I would need to light up the mood. So I returned to the tutorial area to pick up the torch I missed and provided the old man with some worth and comfort. I then made sure to pick up the 2 large tits found inside this chest, bought the Uchigatana from MacDuff for 5,000 souls and upgraded it to +4. But I ran out of money because YouTube isn't paying up and couldn't get it to +5 at the moment. In order to find the souls I needed, I used the fragrant branch of yore we picked up earlier to free Rosabeth and reach the shaded wood, where weird things were happening. I picked up some souls in the forest before getting jumped by one of the shadows, so for good measure I lit the bonfire in shaded ruins and picked up the Chloranthy ring +1 just in time before being bent over backwards and you know the end of the story. Back in the ruins I got my hands on the Titanite chunk and decided to give Nashka a try. Even at +4 the damage from the Uchi was pretty damn good. Unfortunately for me though, her magic attacks were a one-hit KO. Come on man, get it together. This is an easy boss. So I quickly returned to Majula and leveled up to +5, then I returned to the woods where I popped a human effigy, put some pants on because there might be minors in the audience and this is not a Minecraft channel, and it was time for round 2 against the Scorpioness Queen. Try staying at mid-range to bait or tail attack, which are the safest opportunity for punishes. Don't get too far or else she'll cast her magic, and if she does use her magic, just remember that you can just avoid it completely by running around. When she goes into the ground, just reach the platform without the sand and stand on it. And that's how you do it, guys. After upgrading my weapon to +7, I returned to the Forest of Fallen Giants to pick up the Grand Lance for its great capability of staggering and its excellent damage. Then I ventured into No Man's Wharf where I rang the Bell of Awakening and unlocked the shortcut before fighting the Flexel Sentry. With my +7 Uchigatana, I wiped the floor with the boss before taking a relaxing cruise to ease my mind. Now that I had the other side of the Lost Bastille opened up, I could reach Sinner's Rise to fight one of the main story bosses. But since I had some souls to spare, I returned to buy an overpriced ring from a pretentious British cat. The main issue with Lost Sinner was getting to the Lost Sinner. So instead, I returned to Hyde's Tower where I fought an oversized chicken while getting chased by the village people before calling down a bridge and entered to fight Temu Ornstein. With the souls I acquired, I began leveling up endurance and vitality, which both increase a little bit of vigor, while also obviously giving me more equip load for better armor later in the game and for more stamina. The cat ring should allow us to fall down the pit in Majula without dying. After realizing I forgot to equip the ring, I was able to survive the fall down the pit indeed, and with my incredible parkouring skills, I made it safely to the Grave of Saints, where I had to eliminate a bunch of rats colonizing the area. After killing 10 rats, the main boss should spawn in, and you'll recognize him because he has a sick mohawk on his back. As usual, the most annoying thing in multi-enemy bosses in this game is the awful lock-on system, but we put up with that with the damage, so it was an easy first try. Not that the boss is really challenging anyways, but hey, as my good old friend OJ used to say, a win is still a win. After leveling up in Majula, I returned to the Brightstone Seldora to fight the best boss in the game. Psych, we all know it's the Covetous Demon. Anyways, after clearing out the remaining enemies, I picked up the aesthetic found in the room just above the boss, got the Titanite chunks found in the area alongside with some large tits and another slab, and unfortunately got invaded by Forlorn, and let's just say I decided to go back to the bonfire without wasting a homeward bone. Hey, I care for the environment, okay? Back in Majula, I upgraded to +8, but I was missing a single chunk to upgrade to +10. So I reached the Huntsman Copse, where I banished the invader for some cool drip before reaching the Skelly Lords. I was able to dash out a decent amount of damage, so this fight didn't last very long. The only thing I was truly worried about were the bone wheels, but I was able to spawn kill them like noobs on Black Ops 1. Seriously, why do people even like this boss? It's the laziest shit I've ever seen. Killing the Skellies gives us access to the Harvest Valley, which is packed with double Ds, but also there is a Titanite chunk we can pick up. I quickly ran up the ladder and said hello to my crush, and things were about to get heated. Luckily, with my +8 Uchi, I could practically one-shot every enemy in the area. I unlocked the gates and arrived at the #1 best boss in the history of video games, the Covetous Reddit Moderator. A true example of level design and visual storytelling. I returned to Majula to max level the Uchi, making traversing the rest of the area a complete joke, because remember, you won't need to dodge if the enemy is already dead. I committed larceny because that's just what I do in my free time. What do you mean, officer? I was just walking by. After the usual tedious process of entering the fog gate to the Mytha fight, I was able to enter the Mytha fight. What a concept! Mytha has wide range and some weird hitboxes on some of her attacks, like her thrust attack for example, and I mostly had to watch out for when she would do her leaping thrusting move. But luckily, it's not too hard to avoid her hitboxes altogether without rolling. The great damage helped too, of course. I could even chop off her tail, but towards the end of the fight she constantly jumped into the poison pool, which was kind of annoying. Just let me fucking kill you, madam. Anyways, with one final hit, I had the path to the Iron Keep completely opened up. I was convinced this area was going to be total ass, and turns out, it really wasn't. And apart from getting nuked like Japan or doing the Liam Payne's dance, this honestly went pretty smoothly. I was able to defeat both the invaders, including Forlorn, easily. Could it be that maybe ADP truly isn't as bad as people say, and that Dark Souls 2 is actually a hidden masterpiece and the real answer is to just get good? Nah. Anyways, this area isn't too bad if you have patience and try lure every enemy and go for 1v1 fights. After defeating the last ninja turtle, it was Big Iron Daddy's turn to be turned into dust. Fortunately for me, this is the easiest of the main 4 bosses, as he has long pauses in between his attacks, which can be abused, especially with a fast weapon as the Uchigatana. His attacks are also well telegraphed, so dodging them wasn't an issue as long as I paid attention. So the lack of agility here wasn't really noticeable, and when he tried to do his lava Kamehameha, that's when I finished the job. With the souls I just acquired, I leveled up all 4 stats I was going for and started upgrading the Grand Lance in case I would want to switch weapons. I returned to the Bastille to buy some large tits from Macduff, to upgrade further the lance, and to finally open up the gates of hell and fight the Lost Sinner, which was an easy fight, probably because I was doing brutal damage, and by just strafing around her I was able to avoid most of her attacks, and this fight was so short that rolling wasn't really necessary. The only attack I would need to be worried about was a thrust attack, but she only happened to do it once at the end of the fight. This marked the end for our second main boss. The next stop in our journey was the Duke's dear Freja, and since I couldn't use the torch for this fight due to me having to hold the work hook in my left hand at all times, I had to get rid of the annoying baby spiders, which luckily died in only one hit, before I could actually deal with the boss, which consists in only running from one side to the other to hit her heads. Wait, if she has a head in front and a head in the back, where does she shit? After defeating the giant spider, I made sure to pick up the fragrant branch of Yor, and I reached Temu Blighttown. I hate this place. I ventured aimlessly in the dark before reaching the Black Gulch, where I was killed by a boss for the first time since Nashka. The Rhine is an example of an area being far worse than the boss itself. I was able to quickly recover and finish up the Rhine on my second try, granting myself access to the Shrine of Winter. Go away, Aldia, I do not care about your stupid lore. Finally, at the Shrine of Winter. And this This is where things got a bit tougher. I arrived in Drangleic Castle where I was able to open up the main gate. I ignored the secret bonfire and went straight for the cholesterol duo. Getting rid of the Great Bow Dragon Rider was easy peasy, as he has a pitiful health pool. And once it was a 1v1, the ending to this short story had already been written. You can activate the elevator by just luring one of the mannequins and killing them near the statue. I said killing them near the statue. I picked up the key to the King's Passage and was ready to go for the Looking Glass Knight. I had some issues dodging his jump attack, but honestly that happens even under normal circumstances. And this was a boss where the minimal mistake in positioning could mean death. And if he pushed me into a corner, it was practically over. The saving grace was, well, the damage, so while it was the first boss I had any resemblance of issues, this wasn't too bad. Next up, Shrine of Amana. And in case you were wondering, this is how it's done.
This game is easy.
Seaman of Dong was another one of those bosses that I heard a lot of people criticize, but to me, honestly, it's pretty fun. He's piss easy, don't get me wrong, as his slow attacks are easily dodged even with my shitty rolls. To me, the concept is pretty neat and it's satisfying to hit his face whenever he pulls it out of his foreskin. I decided that for this next part, it was best to gear up because it was time for my favorite boss, Velstad. And after that lovely fight, I picked up the King's Ring and I wanted to give the Godskin duo a try. But it was obvious that this fight wasn't going to be as easy as the rest of the game. And the main issue was going to be ADP, but more on that later. As instead, I decided to go and finish up the main quest. So you know what this means, right?
Nice.
Was this the end? Was everybody right on ADP all along? I felt lost. But I stared into the beautiful horizon, looking for answers. And I did find something. And what I found was a big ass shield. So I quickly dispatched the Smelter Demon, killed the Pursuer that spawns in the same arena, and got my hands on the Ring of Blades +1. I upgraded the shield, and it was game on. You might not believe me when I say this, guys, but my lack of frames was starting to be an actual issue, as Nashandra as well presented some problems when trying to dodge her melee attacks or healing during her lasers, because it would just take ages. And well, I also would get one-shotted badly, but that's another story. Then I remembered that this boss is trash and that I'm playing Dark Souls 2. So I solved all issues by just whipping out a bow. I continued doing chip damage with my bow and arrows from a distance, and when I got her low enough, I pulled out my Uchi and silenced her nonsense forever. Now, we saw that there was a spike in difficulty for the last two bosses of the base game. But what about DLC? So I got the Dragon Talon and arrived in Shulva. I picked up the +7 bow and thanked the dragon for killing the enemies for me. I got Flint's ring for no reason, laughed at the dumb enemies falling into my trap before being caught by it myself. I unlocked the shortcut while running away from Jester Thomas, obtained the Dragon Stone and used it to move the thing, and found the secret bonfire before fighting Elana, the first boss of the DLC. My damage was still pretty consistent, and I mostly got lucky with the summons, as I got the skeletons for like 5 times in a row. The long animation during healing were putting me directly into the danger, and the danger of getting ganked was around every corner. And even though I died more to her than any other boss, apart from the duo of course, she was still a fair fight, contrary to the Throne Watcher and Defender, which for me is the worst fight in the entire base game. Finally, after quite a few tries, I was able to get really low. The only thing I would have to be careful of was Velstad, but as soon as I was able to separate the two, I took the chance and finished her off with a couple of swings from my sword. Next up was Sinh, the Slumbering Dragon. Opposite to Elana, the problem here wasn't healing, but it became really hard to tell the right timings for dodging with my pathetic 6 iframes. And some would say it's a skill issue, and while those people would absolutely be right, I feel like the game expects you to have a bit more agility by now, so the attacks are faster, and this is especially true in the DLC, which also made healing a bit of a problem when it took a whole Ice Age to use a single gem. The boss's moves become much tighter and do much more poise damage, so using the shield was not really viable against enemies like Sinh. Despite all that though, I still felt that Sinh was pretty easy to dodge sometimes, and after another series of embarrassing deaths, I decided that the Grand Lance wasn't really doing it for me in this fight, and switching to a faster weapon such as the Uchi Katana surely helped a lot. But the true test came when I had to confront Fume Knight, and this guy is just the worst to deal with low ADP. I know there's also Blue Smelter Demon and a lot of other bosses. I wasn't going to fight them because honestly this game is too long and I was getting tired of playing Dark Souls 2. Can you blame me? Well, Fume Knight was complete shit from a butt, and while not having health was a big factor, I fought this guy with 99 ADP and no vigor, and holy shit, it was night and day. But I will say, it was so satisfying when I could dodge his moves and practically one-cycle him using his phase transition to kill him off. But when I did have to fight his second phase, it was kinda bad. Many one-shot kills that I thought I dodged, but I would get hit by during my recovery. Still, could have been worse, and still proved that if you kinda know what you're doing, ADP is a completely optional easy mode. But is it overhated? Well, yes, obviously. Like, this is the Souls community. Do I think it was a good idea? Maybe if it was implemented better and also explained to the player in some capacity. Also, something I did forgot to mention was that ADP also boosts the build-up of whatever status effect you put on your weapon. such as poison and bleed. So that's why I never used them during this run, because they were completely not necessary. This was though a fun run, so I don't think the implementation and the use of ADP takes away from the overall experience of the game. The game is fun if you level it up, and it's still fun if you don't. Dark Souls 2 is kind of the easiest game in the bunch. I breezed through the base game and encountered some challenge against actual boss that are meant to be challenging because they are like endgame content. During my first run, I also didn't level up ADP like at all, and though I didn't touch the game after that Forsaken run for a while, I came to love this game like many others, and by now I see its flaws as actual integral part of the charm of the game. Anyways, boys and girls, thank you for watching if you came this far. For returning viewers, sorry for the drought of content, but I wanted to try and make this video the best it could possibly be, and hopefully you'll enjoy it. If you are new, I hope you found some entertainment in what you just watched, and if you did, consider subscribing to the channel. But what do you think about ADP? Do you think it's overrated? Do you think it's overhated? Let me know down in the comments, guys, and yeah, this is all I got for today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you next time.